love him or hate him, David Gator has had kind of like a big hand into shaping BioWare in their games as it is. Although he says that he actually wasn't as influential in the company as people make him out to be, which maybe that's true. But you know what I mean? He is one of the most recognizable faces for BioWare and Dragon Age specifically. And he's been very vocal lately, which he says some things that I agree with, and then in another interview, he says things that I just don't agree with. Dragon Age Maestro says EA always spoke about a hypothetical nerd cave full of diehard RPG fans who would always show up, so you didn't have to try and appeal to them. I don't think anything that he is saying in this article is news to anybody on how big companies operate. And I've said it multiple times, specifically with like GTA and Assassin's Creed games, where the core audience, it's always gonna be there. So the games are gonna sell regardless. I think he's just saying that. He's just saying that companies like EA and Ubisoft, they know that it doesn't matter what they put out, there's always gonna be a core audience that it's gonna be there for the game. But they're never just content with that core audience, they're always shooting for the stars, and then they land face first into the mud. A Dragon Age veteran says, EA, not a Dragon Age veteran, just David Gator. EA like to refer to a cave where RPG fans who could be trusted to buy anything the genre threw at them would dwell. And this is not news for anyone. BioWare veteran David Gator explained that before he left BioWare, his status had become somewhat old-fashioned in EA's eyes. I was very vocal on the Dragon Age team. I was always trying to push it to our traditional mechanics, and that wasn't very welcome in the EA sphere. And that's why we got Veilguard. EA is a huge part of the reason why Veilguard is the way it is. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the lack of talent of the team that put Veilguard together is extremely embarrassing. And those were people that chose to work for BioWare, and they chose to work on that project because people like David Gator and other developers and writers have proven is that if you don't like the course the company you're working for is taking you, you just leave. You don't wait to be fired. You don't do your job so poorly that you have to be fired by a company that would pick up a raccoon if they knew how to code. He says that EA considered those mechanics, the kind that shape games like Dragon Age Origins, to be slow and cumbersome, rather than the actiony and slick presentation that the studio was being pushed towards. It's the reality of the video game industry. When one game works, and in this case, I think it's God of War. God of War sold like popcorn, and all of a sudden, everything had to be a God of War clone. That meant that Gator's views were often not very welcome, despite his long tenure at the studio and work on many of its most famous RPGs. He claims that the overseers refer to those mechanics as being in the cave. The cave, he explains, was where nerds went. The nerds were in the cave, you made an RPG, and the nerds in the cave would always show up for an RPG, because it was an RPG. And this is true. If you like RPGs like I do, and someone releases an RPG, you will know. I'm telling you, because it literally happened like a few days ago, where I found out through TikTok that Owlcat, it's making not only a Disco Elysium-like, but another Warhammer 40k like CRPG, and I was losing my mind, because that's how humans work. We like one thing, and we like to play the same thing over and over again. In EA's eyes, it meant that you didn't have to worry about the nerds, which backfired on them massively. You didn't have to try and appeal to them. You had to worry about the people that weren't in the cave, which was the audience we actually wanted, which was much larger. Who is this audience, you would say? Is this the elusive modern audience that they claim they weren't aiming for, though? Really, Gator clarifies that was the audience that EA wanted, and he basically got what he wanted. Unfortunately for the publisher, the endpoint to that philosophy was Anthem. Was it though? A live service effort that flopped entirely at launch and was entirely abandoned within 2 years. So he claims that the end of that, philosophy was with Anthem. So this thing wouldn't even apply to Veilguard, in his opinion. And he did defend Veilguard at release, which we all conveniently forget, but I don't forget or forgive, by the way. He did defend Veilguard, and I know it was 100% out of like a sense of duty to the game that basically made him who he is nowadays. So he would just say like, oh, the game is great, and I'm really proud of the people that made them, but they didn't do a really good job. So you have to take his takes again with a grain of salt, because he's very wishy-washy and he hasn't worked on EA for a very long time and on BioWare. It's just interesting to me that this is the hill we're dying on, and it just kind of validates what a lot of us have been saying for a long time, that companies, first of all, they don't care about you, and if you think otherwise, you're stupid, because why would you even think that? Why would you think a corporation would have your best interest at heart? The thing that they can profit off the most, they will always, nurture that they do aim for an audience that it's not there. They're trying to aim to please the majority of players, which is an impossible task to do, because who do you think you are? Like, that's never gonna be a thing that you can do. You cannot make a game for everyone. And they keep trying, but it doesn't work. Like, you have to actually appeal to the cave dwellers. And I feel like this is just trying to kind of minimize the actual influence the people that worked on that game had. Because you cannot tell me with a straight face that the people that worked on Veilguard all worked on it against their will and they wish they had done something different, because I literally have statements of the art director and the game director literally saying otherwise. You cannot tell me, and people have tried to tell me, that the reason why Veilguard failed is because people were mistreated and they were under duress and they were stressed and they didn't have time to make the game. And they had no room for growth because the company wanted Veilguard to be like this and they couldn't do anything else. I don't believe that, like, at all. Sure, you're gonna have more constraints because you work for a bigger company. So you're gonna have guidelines and you're gonna have deadlines. But you cannot tell me, like, with your entire chest, that they didn't, put whatever they wanted to put in that game. You cannot tell me that, because they literally have told you, and I will go through it in this one, that that's not true. And they also tell you exactly how many years they actually worked on Veilguard, which will be relevant later. David Gator keeps talking, okay? He keeps talking. And he says, Baldur's Gate 3 and Clear Obscure Expedition 33 prove publishers wrong on how successful RPGs can be when the game is good and what's possible when a game is given time to cook. Veilguard isn't mentioned in this article, but we can theorize, we can assume that Veilguard is, at the forefront of this comment here, and that's my opinion, obviously. Gator meant is that Baldur's Gate 3 and Expedition 33 are both kind of love letters to their genre that allow what they've created to translate to a larger audience that genre normally hits. And I think that's just good video games. Like, he's just saying that normally people wouldn't play games like Baldur's Gate 3 or Expedition 33. And that is true. Again, that's another factual truth. They're very niche games that only people that really like RPGs would, want to play. The reception of the game has been so great that it reaches other people's ears and it piques their interest. And then they play the game and they love it and they tell someone else, and it's just a word of mouth. And we all end up playing like Expedition 33. And that's just what a good game does, okay? And it can be a RPG, it can be a first-person shooter, it can be an indie game, it can be a card game. If it's good, it will just reach a large audience. And that's what you do, right? That's what they should have done with Veilguard. It's make a good game. Don't focus on the people outside the cave, EA. Don't look, outside the cave. Close the cave and sit down and start finger painting on the wall and make a good game, You make a good story, good characters. You hire, good people to develop your game. Maybe you bring back people that worked for you and that know what they're doing for the final installment of the franchise. And then you have this thing that it's really, really good quality, and you put it out. And people that are in the cave already, they're gonna buy it, and they're gonna play it, and they're gonna tell people that are outside the cave. And those people are gonna buy it too, and they're gonna tell people that are, miles away from the cave to also play it. That's how you do it. The sales for Baldur's Gate 3 were amazing, and kind of make a lie out of, I remember when I was like at EA, there was a lot of investigation into how large is the RPG audience and how large is the action audience and so forth. And they would have an estimate that they said it caps out at like the RPG audience caps out at 5 million. But that doesn't seem to be true when the game is good. Yeah, when I was talking about Veilguard at the beginning, like months ago, years ago at this point, you know what I mean? It feels like a lifetime ago. And I would say to you, I don't understand how we got here. I don't understand how I can tell you for X, Y, and Z that this is not gonna work. And a company that has actual people with degrees cannot tell you that. Oh, only 5 million. Yeah, but that's 5 million sales that you're gonna get if the game is really good. And then word of mouth, which is free for you, it's gonna do the rest, which is what happened to Baldur's Gate 3 in Expedition 33. Why are we focusing on making games for an audience that you don't even have? Like, why are you making a game for an audience that doesn't exist because it's not there? You don't know for sure if those people are gonna buy it, instead of actually making a good game that you know if it's good, the people that like the genre are gonna buy 100%, and then they're just gonna do the work for you and tell other people to buy it as well. And here is where, David Gator kind of like drops the ball, in my opinion. Ex-Dragon Age writer worries more fans are tying their identity to games and hoping to see games fail to prove a point. See what happened to them. See how their games sold. The RPG audience doesn't really agree with itself as to what an RPG requires. No. Because it's in the name. Role play. Role P play. G game. It's a game that allows you to role play. That's what an RPG is. Companies do not agree on what an RPG is. RPG elements. What the is that supposed to mean? And they could get very loud. The difficulty is if suddenly you end up with anti-fans. They're very determined suddenly to see your game fail at sort of a sort of a lesson to others who would make games of the same type. No, it's a little bit more, a little bit more nuanced than that. I feel like from going to fan to anti-fan, I feel there's a lot of trolls online, and that's just like the reality of life. It's the internet. You know how hard it is to make someone like me hate everything you stand for? Very hard. I've been a BioWare fangirl for what, 10 years, over 10 years at this point. It takes a lot. You know what it takes? It takes for the company to spit in your face and to be like, actually, we don't care about you, cave dweller. You and everything you love about this franchise. That's what it takes. It takes disrespect. It doesn't take for the game to be, not what I expected. No game is ever going to be what you expect it to be, because you have an idea in your head, and everyone has an idea in their head that is completely unique to themselves. And then that's never going to be the reality that you play. But from going to actively supporting a company to just being completely disillusioned with it and the people that work in it, it takes a lot of audacity on the company's part, in my opinion. They are so invested in making it what they imagine that suddenly, if it's their personal investment in seeing that fail, or seeing the developers who made that decision be punished, so that they could point it in the future and say, well, see what happened to them, see how their game sold. You don't want to do that, do you? Yes, but we're not. Like, that's the thing. Like, they think like everything is a harassment campaign. They are cogs in a machine, okay? And well-oiled cogs make the machine run smoothly. That's what all of us are in one way or another. If you're working for a company, you're working for a studio, you're getting a paycheck at the end of the month or week, or how often you get paid, you are a cog in a machine. And when I'm paying you money for a product, I expect the product to be to standards. Specifically if the company, as BioWare has proved before, is known for making good RPGs and good single player games. But to say like, oh, because the end product is not what they expected it to be, they are orchestrating a hate campaign and they're harassing developers. When the reality is the end product was so terrible and the developers have been laughing in people's faces, just mocking their core audience, that people are just disillusioned with the company and they don't want to buy the game. What would they? And even if they have to sort of manipulate the data or move the goalposts, it seems like it's becoming increasingly vital for these people to be able to run around and make their points online. To the point that I think a lot of developers, more and more, are kind of withdrawing from the public sphere. That's a lie as big as my arm. What do you mean? This is why developers are withdrawing from the public sphere when every week, someone is screaming about how a developer called them a for having an opinion on their game. I am of the mind that if you're actively working on a product in a video game a company, there should be a clause in your contract that says you cannot argue with people online about said game. He stresses that even as a lead writer, he was just a mid-level manager with pretty limited influence over how a Dragon Age game turned out. But I'm a name that they see online. Why is that? I thought, developers became more withdrawn from the public because people were being mean to them, David. See online and they can attach to, so therefore I'm responsible for everything that they either like or don't like and can be held accountable. So it feels almost like it's getting to the point where it's easier to just not have a public name out there at all. True. And I don't think it's the same case with actual Veilguard writers and developers, because again, and that's to their detriment, they are extremely fucking chronically online. So I remember seeing tweets of Veilguard writers saying, oh, I wrote Lucanis to be short and bisexual because I based him on myself. Patrick Wicks, who is now non-binary, wrote this character that turns out to be non-binary. They said that, though. They said that they are responsible for the things that they, that people don't like. They literally admit and are proud of things in Veilguard that turned out to be publicly, and generally disliked by 99% of their audience. So why can I not say, oh, you ruined this thing that you claim to have come up with for this game yourself? It was bad and kind of ruined the experience for me. I cannot say that to them. I cannot say like, oh, you shouldn't have done that though. That wasn't a good idea. Are developers and writers held at gunpoint in studios? Is that something that I just don't know? Because it sounds that way. It sounds like being a developer, it's, like being a veteran in Afghanistan. Because what do you mean they have no say on anything? Although they have claimed that they do. And the things that they claim to have actual, sway over are in the game. And people didn't like it. Which one is it? Do they have very limited influence over the game? Or are they lying about the influence that they did have in the game? And I had someone say, oh, it's, it's not their fault. It's not the writer's fault that the game was bad. They were under pressure. And, you know that it's not their fault because they got laid off. their fault. I mean, they got fired because of their performance, but it wasn't their fault. What do you mean? What are we talking about? What who are we? Where are we? Who am I? Where am I? So you're saying that there's this product that was very, poorly received by the general public. And this team of people, because again, not everyone got fired, did they? Not everyone got laid off, did they? There's people that got put somewhere else. Do I believe that every single person that worked on Veilguard is bad at their job? No. So do I think BioWare NEA think every single person that worked on Veilguard are bad at their job? No. You know why? Because they picked the good ones out of the shit pile and they put them in other projects. They picked people for Mass Effect 5, and they picked, people for other EA titles. Why didn't Patrick Wicks get moved? No, I don't think it's 99. I think it's 100% of the writers for Veilguard get picked and moved to another project. Is it because they were bullied and they were, forced by the company to work at the company? Or do you guys think maybe, and call me crazy if you like, because at the end of the day, they didn't do their job? Do you guys think, I know, controversial opinion, hot take, do you guys think that could be the case?